Hello and welcome to the second part of the Breaking Bad recap series. The series follows the kidnapping of Jesse and Walter by Tuco, who intends to take them to Mexico to cook meth for him 24/7. Walt attempts to poison Tuco with ricin, but Hector disrupts his plan. Meanwhile, Skyler is worried over Walt's disappearance and Hank remembers that Jesse had been supplying Walt with marijuana. Jesse arrives at Walt's home and convinces him to give him half of their remaining money. Walt continues his treatment and his condition improves, but he is concerned about the growing medical bills. Skinny Pete is ripped off by a drug-addicted couple, and Walt tells Jesse that unless he does something about it, word will get around that Jesse and his crew are easy marks. Walt has trouble getting in touch with Jesse, who has been staying at home since his encounter with Spooge. Saul Goodman tracks down Walt at the school and offers his services for a cut of the profit, but Walt realizes that there is not much money left for his family. After Combo is murdered by a rival gang, Saul proposes a new distribution method for Walt and Jesse's product. Walt receives a large offer for the short notice delivery of the remainder of their inventory, but at the same time receives a call from Skyler, notifying him of her imminent labor. Walt delivers the inventory in time but misses his daughter's birth. Jesse confronts Walt about his share of the payment, but Walt refuses to disperse the funds until Jesse can prove his sobriety. Jane blackmails Walt into delivering Jesse's share, and Walt finds Jesse and Jane passed out in bed after a drug binge. Jesse discovers Jane's passing and reaches out to Walt, who contacts Saul to conceal Jesse's involvement in Jane's death. Walt's funds are funneled into his son's website, which attracts the attention of the media. Walt's secretive behavior becomes a problem when he accidentally references a second cell phone while under the initial effects of anesthesia moments before his surgery. Skyler reveals many of Walt's lies, leading to her leaving him. Walt is having difficulty adjusting to his new life, and Saul encourages him to start producing meth again. The cousins arrive at Walt's home to kill him, but are called off at the last minute by Gus. Walt moves back into the house and tells Skyler he has no intention of leaving, but Skyler calls the police in an attempt to have him thrown out. Unbeknownst to Walt, Gus arranges a meeting with his Mexican cartel counterparts and makes it clear that he wants Walt left alone. Walt explains to Skyler that he committed all of his illegal activities for the sake of the family, and begs her to accept the drug money. Later, Skyler seduces Ted and informs Walt of her infidelity. Walt makes a scene at Skyler's workplace while confronting Ted, but Mike removes Walt before the police can arrive. Saul tries to convince Walt to continue producing meth, but Walt refuses the offer and loses Saul's help laundering money. Jesse makes a sale but receives only half the payment, while the second half is delivered to Walt. Walt signs a divorce contract with Skyler, gives the money to Jesse, and takes a liking to his new lab assistant, Gail. Hank discovers Jesse's link to the RV and orders it destroyed. Skyler pressures Walt to convince Jesse to drop the charges against him, and Walt engineers a fallout with Gail and offers Jesse a chance to renew their partnership. Marie lashes out at Hank's boss when she hears they had taken his gun away, and while Walt is at the hospital, Jesse is left on his own in the lab and worried about meeting their quota. Skyler proposes that Walt pay the hospital bills, and Walt is suffering from insomnia. Jesse tries to peddle the meth he has been skimming at the lab and, fed up with Badger and Skinny Pete's reluctance to sell to their rehab group, decides to sell to Andrea, a new member at their NA meeting. Jesse discovers that Andrea's little brother was the kid who shot Combo. Walt warns Jesse that there may be hidden cameras in the lab and that he won't be able to protect Jesse if Gus finds out. Jesse is ready for revenge when he discovers that the drug dealers are using Andrea's 11-year-old brother Thomas as a hitman and drug dealer. He decides to kill the two dealers himself, but Walt takes steps to protect him. After killing the drug dealers, Walt has a tense meeting with Gus, who chooses Gail as his new assistant. Walt and Jesse are held in the lab by Victor and Mike, anxiously awaiting Gus' reaction to the murder of Gail. Walt orders Jesse to murder Gail, knowing that Gus will have to keep him alive once he is the only trained chemist left. Jesse distracts himself by buying an elaborate stereo system and throwing a party with Badger and Skinny Pete. Walt follows Mike to a bar and asks him to get him in a room with Gus, where Walt will do the rest. Walt is furious about a motion detecting surveillance camera installed in the lab. Skyler convinces Walt to buy the car wash, and Jesse's increasing complacency leads to over $70,000 in cash being stolen from his house. Mike takes Jesse to collections and assures Walt that he is safe. Walt asks Jesse to kill Gus and concocts a ricin poison in the lab. Hank's research uncovers Gus Depot and Jesse is brought in to help clean and move all the product out of it. Walt and Jesse get into a major fight over their trust issues, and Jesse is informed that he now belongs to the cartel. Gus tells Jesse he can run the lab now, but Jesse tells him not to kill Walt. Walt attempts to stop Hank's investigations into Gus, but Hank is undeterred. Jesse finds the ricin vial missing and confronts Walt at the latter's barricaded home. Walt convinces Jesse that Gus is behind the poisoning, and the two agree Gus must be killed. Walt attempts to kill Gus with a car bomb, but Gus abandons the vehicle in the hospital parking garage. Detectives question Jesse about Brock, but Saul intervenes. Jesse is kidnapped from the hospital and held at gunpoint in the lab, but Walt rescues him and together they destroy the lab. The season ends with a shot of a potted lily of the valley plant in Walt's backyard, revealing that he had poisoned Brock. Walt uses a giant magnet to destroy evidence of his and Jesse's activities and shoots and kills the boy, much to Jesse's horror. Walter invites Jesse to his home and reveals his regret about selling his share of gray matter and his plans to build another empire. Jesse still wants to quit the business, so Walter employs Todd as his assistant. Walter visits Jesse to pay him his cut of the deal with Declan, and Jesse sighs in relief. Hank discovers that Walt is Heisenberg and confronts him. Walt offers Jesse money to leave town for good and assume a new identity, but Jesse realizes that Saul took the rice and cigarette from him so that Walt could frame Fring for poisoning Brock. Jesse breaks into the White home and douses it with gasoline, leading Walt to find Saul's car crashed in his driveway and his house unoccupied and doused in gasoline. Hank is revealed to have stopped Jesse from torching the White's house and videotapes Jesse's confession. Walt calls Todd to negotiate a hit on Jesse, but Todd's uncle, Jack Welker, agrees on the condition that Walt cooks one more time so that Todd can observe him. Walt attempts to lure Jesse out of hiding by having Andrea call him, but Hank intercepts the message and stages a photo to convince Walt that Jesse found the money. Walt panics and drives to Tohachile, pleading with Jesse not to burn the money and confessing to various murders. Jack and his crew arrive and take Jesse hostage. Marie tells Skyler that Hank has Walt in custody, and Skyler agrees to tell the truth. Walt Jr. defends his mother in the ensuing fight and calls the police on Walt, who escapes with Holly. Walt relocates to a cabin in New Hampshire while Saul leaves for Nebraska. Walt calls Walter Jr. and gives him $9,720,000 to give to Walt Jr. when Jack brings Jesse in from cooking to show him to Walter. Walt tackles Jesse to the ground and triggers the M60, mortally wounding Walt and killing everyone else except for Todd, whom Jesse strangles to death, and Jack, whom Walt shoots in the head. Walt and Jesse acknowledge each other one final time before Walt dies. Hope you have enjoyed this series recap of Breaking Bad. Make sure to press the subscribe button and click the bell icon so you never miss any videos from Binge Breakdown.